welcome back to another episode of Banzai Chat. I'm your host, Ryan, and we are talking about all things pop culture, anime, video games, all that good stuff. And today I have a guest on the show. It's been a while. I've been basically talking to myself for a couple of the episodes, and it sucks. so it's good to have a guest back on and talking about a really good topic that we'll be getting into soon, but I want to introduce my guest. It's my good friend Brad, and welcome, Brad, to the show. How's it going?
Thank you for having me again. It's always fun.
See, this is what I'm talking about. It just doesn't work as well. So. But, you get the point, right?
Yeah, and great audience here. It's the best audience I've ever seen on a podcast.
I didn't know my dog had actual hands instead of paws, so very well done. But, Brad, you've been on the show a couple times, and we've talked about other things, but you have started a podcast, I guess pretty recently and stuff, and I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. You and your co-host do the double feature versus, right?
Yes. So the podcast is called Double Feature Versus. It's me and a buddy of mine, Anthony, and the entire premise of the show is we take two movies that have a similar theme in some way, and we kind of compare them. We talk about the movies individually, see what they kind of have to share about them, see which one is a better movie in what aspects, and which one just doesn't meet the requirements of whatever that goal that they had in mind was. So we've talked about kind of like the family-friendly movies. We've talked about thrillers. We've talked about underrated movies, ones that got critical praise but were not really good movies, So we kind of talk about whatever comes to mind and what we want to talk about. So it's not just all movies that everybody knows. For most of the movies we hit, it's usually one that the other hasn't seen before. And we'll constantly be like, oh, we got to watch this movie and do this. One of them was Bill and Ted, and Anthony had never seen any of the Bill or Ted movies.
That's interesting, especially to go back and have to research that or see them too, even with the third movie and stuff like that. That would be a lot of fun.
So we do stuff like that, and we just have a blast with it.
Yeah. One of the ones that I thought was really cool that you did, because it's kind of more recent with what's going on, just with just superhero stuff and stuff like that, is your Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy kind of comparison, because that is a very good movie comparison, especially from a DC to Marvel kind of thing, which is you think about it, of course, they are very similar and kind of sharing a lot of similar ideas and stuff like that. But since the Game Awards that just came out, they have the new Suicide Squad game coming out, and
Suicide Squad versus the Justice League.
Yeah, and I think it looks really great too. But to me, it's from when the new Guardians game came out, and I haven't played it. I haven't obviously played even the Avengers game either, but I just think it just looks so similar. It's but again, from your podcast talking about the movies, it's hard to they are so much similar than they're so much more almost the same that you can think of, even though they're Marvel and DC, and Suicide Squad's a little more extreme than Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff in a lot of ways, but
right, and they are very similar, but they both have completely different end goals in mind.
And I like them both in different ways.
Yeah,
and that's what's cool about it, because it's something that we're going to be talking about with the show, I guess we're talking about. But I like that episode of the podcast was really good, because I love Guardians of the Galaxy more than Suicide Squad, I'll say, but I do love Suicide Squad. But I never think they're ripping off each other.
No, because they, like I said, they have different goals in mind. They're very similar in that it's a ragtag group of characters that most people haven't heard of, teaming up with a single goal, and they're not exactly good guys, but they're trying to do good.
Yeah. And they're trying to get money, and they're trying to do it for in the end, they do it for the better of the world, and they do save the world in general and stuff like that. But it's like never in their mindset, which goes into kind of the topic of what we'll be talking today of like our characters and the show that we'll be talking about. It goes, and that's why I thought that episode was really cool, because comparing those two and the way you guys did it was really good, because they're both great.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's what's good about your show. It's like sometimes there is a pendulum of like one does suck and one is great, but
Yeah,
for
we're
that
not doing
one,
Godfather 2 versus Dragon Ball Evolution every week. It's
yeah, that'd be a Dragon Ball Evolution. We win every time.
of course, it's the greatest
Yeah.
movie ever made.
It's over 9,000 on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, isn't it? But yeah. So anything else you want to talk about with your podcast and stuff? I just wanted to let you kind of have the floor with that.
So you can find it on Google Play, iTunes, and Spotify. You can check out the website, doublefeatureverses.com, to get information on where you can find it and everything. And check it out. Hopefully you like it. You get to hear a lot of my stupid opinions about movies, me debating with Anthony about different things, and it's a fun time.
Yeah, I always like your opinion on movies and stuff, and especially hearing Anthony, which I never met your co-host and stuff, but he does have it's funny the banter you guys have with it.
He's a walking IMDb page.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe Anthony's movie knowledge. It's absolutely insane.
And that's crazy coming from you, because
yeah.
I always think you're a walking IMDb page. So it's that's to have that collide is pretty impressive.
Oh,
so.
yeah. It leads to a lot of fun, especially when one of us thinks we're right about something, and then it's both of us pulling up IMDb and going, shit, you were right.
I know, it always hurts getting that right.
Yeah.
God damn it. That was that person or that director or that thing or that that shot or whatever. But what I'm going to do, because I love stealing people's shit, I am going to steal Brad's show here, and we're going to be doing a Banzai podcast kind of episode in the realm of double feature verses. And the way we're doing this, and me and Brad talked about this, and he gave me permission, so I guess I'm not, fully stealing it.
You still got to sign the paperwork, that you'll never do it again.
Yeah. If I make $1 million off this episode, it goes straight to you.
Yeah.
So, but yes, we are going to be talking about the comparison, a versus mode of Cowboy Bebop, the animated series, to the live action Netflix Cowboy Bebop anime. Which, before we jump into that, don't you think it's annoying talking about these two? And like, I don't think it had to be renamed different, because it should be Cowboy Bebop, even if it's a live action. But like, you have to say that if you're talking about either one, right?
It's the same way that we had a episode previously talking about the new Ghostbusters, and we compared it to Ghostbusters 2016.
Okay.
And we always had to say, and Ghostbusters 2016.
Yeah.
Because Ghostbusters
the
and
girls one,
Ghostbusters.
right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the all-female reboot one. And so, yeah, it's like, it's stupid that you have to say that, because you should be able to tell, but yeah, you got to.
But you're talking about different contexts and different things, so
yeah.
It just, of course, people, it's like 90% of people are going to understand what you're talking about. It's like, if I'm talking about when we get into the Cowboy Bebop stuff, like these certain episodes that are not in the live action, it's like, of course, that's the anime, because that's the anime.
But at the same time, if I go, man, Ed in Cowboy Bebop was probably one of the most annoying things ever. Which one am I talking about here?
Yeah.
Like,
it's like, are you really going to talk about the 10-second clip that Ed was in compared to in the anime where she had, hours of,
she was
dialogue.
introduced in like episode 11. I might be a little bit off on that one, but I know that she like leaves like almost 2 or 3 episodes from the very end.
Yeah.
So she's in at least half of the show.
For sure. Yeah. She has a lot of time. After she's introduced, it's like she's in a lot of it, But, yeah, let's get into this. So normally we do like the breakdown thing, so I'll do my little like chime for that, and we'll get in this breakdown of going through, it's just weird, like kind of like stealing a show. You know, I just feel like a bounty hunter. I'm just bounty hunters don't steal, I guess, maybe a little bit, but you know, but yeah, let's just get into this this argument or talk of Cowboy Bebop versus Cowboy Bebop.
Breakdown, breakdown. Try to shoot me. Breakdown, breakdown. Try to shoot me. Breakdown, breakdown. Try to shoot me. Breakdown, breakdown. Let's rock out.
All right, so to hit things off with this, we'll break this into what each Cowboy Bebop we're talking about. The first Cowboy Bebop came out in 1998, directed by Mr. Watanabe, and with 26 episodes into count. This was a late 90s anime, but iconic in the anime field. I mean, it's like anyone that likes anime will probably say Cowboy Bebop's up in their top 10 at least.
Yeah, for anybody that grew up in the 90s watching anime, Cowboy Bebop was one of the ones that was introduced through Toonami, and almost everybody in America knew about it. It was up there with Lupin the Third, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, in terms of like Gundam, those anime that like everybody, you'd go, hey, you watch anime? What ones have you seen? Cowboy Bebop, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, like those are the ones that people would name.
For sure, yeah. So let's go into how you were introduced to the Cowboy Bebop anime.
So, like I said, Toonami being like growing up during that time, Toonami basically was my gateway to every anime that I, grew up with. And I'll be honest, I really didn't get into anime as like a culture and everything until Netflix came around, and it was like, oh, there's more than just Dragon Ball Z. What do you know?
Yeah.
Turns out Japan's been making shows for a while now.
But what's funny, because I know you're a big Dragon Ball Z fan, it's like Dragon Ball Z is like the OG, like.
Oh yeah, that's my OG in my heart.
But it's like funny because that is so much more anime than Cowboy Bebop could ever be.
Oh yeah,
if you think about it, it's like so that's what's funny when you're like, ooh, like this is anime, but I like Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah,
But Dragon Ball Z is hardcore, just like deep roots anime.
It's 7 episodes of screaming before a punch gets thrown. It's peak anime. You can't get any better than that.
Yeah, so keep going with. You just first saw it on.
It was
Cartoon
on.
Network.
I remember Cartoon Network. Toonami was the first time that I actually saw Cowboy Bebop, and I remember the first episode I saw was actually the one with Ed and Ein going on their own adventure together, and the one where they run into the shrooms and Ein takes the shrooms and kind of like just does the hop off that everybody knows about that scene. That was the first episode of Cowboy Bebop I ever saw. And I actually, funny enough, was like, oh, this is pretty good. This is an interesting show. I should start this from the beginning. And so I eventually did start it from the beginning, and I was like, who are these characters? What is... No, this isn't the show that I wanted to see. This is clearly a different... Am I forgetting what the name of the show was?
And the show is, like, it's very vague of, like, what you think it could be.
Right.
And It's nice the play of words that they do with Cowboy Bebop because they are bounty hunters. That's literally what it's almost like it should be called Bounty Hunter Bebop, but that doesn't have it doesn't roll off the tongue well, but
right, but bounty hunters in this world are called cowboys.
Yeah.
And then their ship is the Bebop. So it's the bounty hunter ship, albeit aka the Cowboy Bebop.
Yes, yeah. But again, like if you think about it, just like if you look at it, it might not be a futuristic kind of sci-fi it is. If you just looked at the name Cowboy Bebop,
you wouldn't get anything from that name.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. I'd probably think it was like a Western kind of like series.
And it is.
A little bit, yeah.
And that's like why it's such a cool, the aesthetic of Cowboy Bebop holds true and why it got so popular. At least, in my mind.
It's a timeless one because it doesn't make any like pop culture references or anything like that. It became its own thing, and it kind of just kept delving into its own universe to the point that it didn't need to make references or bring anything in to get people to watch it. It was just an interesting story with interesting characters in this world that was just... anything could happen in this world. It wasn't based on like magic or anything like that, but... with the scientific, like, sci-fi theme that it took, it just blasted that past anything that, people had seen in like an animated sense like that with more of an adult theme.
Yeah.
It wasn't made to be like the family-friendly anime. It was made to be like that adult, not vulgar adult, but adult kind of show that you could sit down and watch.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And that's where I think a lot of people obviously got captivated with it because it's an interesting story and it has all these things where they have one-off episodes and majority of it, like almost like 75% of Cowboy Bebop like has nothing to do with actually what is going on with an actual story.
Yeah, there's little plot lines that kind of intertwine between episodes, but overall, you could watch any of the episodes almost out of order and still get the full experience from the show.
Yeah, and I think that kind of bothers people, but at the time, it didn't bother people.
Right. Yeah, people want more serialized content now than content that can be like episode of the week. Like The Simpsons, Family Guy, stuff like that. People are starting to fall away from that, and there's a lot of shows that are trying to like struggle to find that middle ground of being able to make a fun show episode to episode where they don't have to worry about what's going on, but be able to tell a story throughout like a series of episodes at the same time.
Yeah. So what were your favorite kind of things of the anime Cowboy Bebop?
So when it comes to the anime Cowboy Bebop, the music
For
right
sure.
off the bat
Yoko Kanno
is
nails it.
You can't get
She's
any better.
so great.
Like my love of lo-fi jazz.
Yeah.
It's from Cowboy Bebop.
And that did start when there wasn't anything like that. It's like
Yeah.
you didn't have lo-fi cow chill,
No.
on YouTube. That was whoever made that channel definitely was probably alive during that time, but like didn't have a channel.
It's funny. The person, I believe they said that they were inspired by like that lo-fi beat that Toonami has, which Toonami stole it from Cowboy
Yeah.
Bebop.
Of course.
So
And
yeah, the lo-fi YouTube streaming thing is technically just 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon from Cowboy
that's
Bebop.
hilarious. And yeah, the music I think is what holds a lot of fans too, and even myself in mind. It's just like Yoko Kanno. She's just the way she put in like that like composure of each episode, and it's like they redid things and like, but she knew like how to make that whole anime sound right, just with the
Yes.
music too. Because she got like the seatbelts to do the opening. It's like it's not like she did that. She got other people to do that. And then there's other bands and like musical influences that are in throughout the show and stuff. Like in the Heavy Metal Queen episode, there's like the heavy metal. It's just one track. It's just in that episode because it just fits with that episode. And yeah, like Mushroom Samba, like that's a great track too. And it's like, it has no jazz. It's very like kind of like trippy and just like weird. So it's like each episode you never know.
The music fitted to the episode.
It's a whole new track list.
Yeah.
And like you're not going to get that. And with most animes, like music I think is very important, and even that in the 90s time never really took it too seriously. You almost like would hear the same thing through every episode. Like even if you think of like Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that, they would have the same song or theme or like just like background music throughout it. And that's fine because it worked for that.
It would make those iconic tracks that everybody kind of
Yeah.
knows. Like if you played the Namek theme for me, I'd be able to go, oh yeah, that's when Gohan and Krillin appeared on Namek, all the way up to the Ginyu Force showing up.
Yeah.
I can tell you exactly where that music played. With Cowboy Bebop, I probably would have a harder time unless it was like the heavy metal track. I can tell you exactly where
Yeah.
that played. But for the most part, I'd have to like go through the Rolodex in my brain and go, hold on, where would that have played in? And if it's more of like a lo-fi jazz kind of sound to it, it could be anywhere in the entire show. But it's all such great music that you could throw on that soundtrack and listen to it in your car.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a mix of like high intense jazz
Yes.
to just like some of the most like, real folk blues and like, blue and stuff like that. It's like depressing kind of just like sad, just ending kind of like themes of just what they show even in the show, especially like Real Folk Blues, which is the ending theme. It's like that is like da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Like like it has even more of a double context to it where it's the end of every episode, but it is it's Spike's freaking backstory. So it's like every time you hear, which with so many times it goes into the actual episode and not having to be the ending credits. You're like, oh, if Real Folk Blues plays, it's like it has to do with Spike.
Yeah.
And that's just like it I love when music can mesh with art like that so well. And that's why I think Cowboy Bebop 2 is like really cool, because the music just is fucking phenomenal. It's so good.
Yeah. The music is probably the highest point of the anime. And typically when you start talking about something, you're like, oh, the soundtrack was pretty good. You're pretty much scraping the bottom of the barrel. But when it comes to Cowboy Bebop, the music is like the barrel itself, and everything else is kind of contained in it.
Yeah.
So it definitely pushes itself further because of that. And the music exemplifies everything that's going in the show, like especially the emotions that are in the show, because this isn't a happy show by any means. It's not dark. But the themes around it are kind of like depressing in a way. It's,
it's more real.
Yeah. I mean, for it being like in a sci-fi kind of setting and everything like that, the problems that these characters are going through are real. You have Spike dealing with his past choices and decisions. You have Faye trying to find out who she even is and trying to be somebody that she can be proud of. You have Jet just kind of trying to rebuild his name and, be somebody for his family and everything like that. You have Ed, who just wants to be included in something.
Yeah.
And she just kind of jumps in and just wants to be a part of the team, more or less. And you get to see these characters interact because they all have different stories. They all have different intentions. So it's not like it's a clear-cut, oh, we're going to go get this bounty and get the money and, go on to the next one. Every time they're going for a bounty, they each have a different goal in mind for it, which causes
they're
them to
not
clash.
like teammates.
No, they're...
Even though they're not like trying to kill each other, or like, and this goes with like kind of like the sense of like Guardians and Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
It's like they have their own agenda in mind and they all want, the bounty or like what it's going to get in the end. But through the story that happens with each episode and whatever it is, they all just get conflicted and they're all kind of like narcissistic in a way of just, it falls into just something that, if it's Spike's story or Faye's story or Jet's, or just like they're, them just not trying to be too much involved in the story.
Right.
So it's like, it's like a interesting kind of like thing to think about because they're all running from their past.
Yeah, more or
but
less.
They don't know each other's past because they don't want to divulge it. That because even like Jet and Spike like barely know each other, but they're like best friends.
Yeah, they're best friends. And they have each other's back at all times. But I love that subcontext that they technically are like mortal enemies in past life.
They like it's like Jet hates all of like Spike's like ways of living, and like he would never want to kick him off his ship because he loves him there as a companion and a friend, and like his like support of like being a bounty hunter and stuff.
Right.
And Spike the same way as a lone wolf, just like I don't need anybody, like F society, F at this, I can take care of myself, but he does need to come back to a home with, even if it's just bell peppers, without the beef, it's like he does need to come home to some shitty spaceship, if that's the case.
How can you call this beef and peppers if there's no beef? Shut up and eat your beef and peppers.
Yeah, exactly. Hunger is the best spice.
Yeah.
But I know, and that's like goes with it, Faye too, Faye acts the same way as she says she doesn't rely on anybody, but is constantly clinging on to every single thing, which is kind of her backstory and her just thing of just life of like her trying to deal with that. And it's funny because even her being on the Bebop, she like is clinging on to these people that don't want to be clinged on to. You know,
Right.
like they're like, get the hell away from us. Like, you fucking suck. Like, you know, we like your help. Like, you can stay on here, but like, we're not giving you this emotional support that you're actually like whining for. Like, we don't hate you and we don't want you to die, but it's funny. And that's why it's like Ed and Ein too, that they're just on the ship and they're just like more at peace because of the chaos.
Yeah.
Because they're just
Well,
like, everyone's crazy, but you know, if I throw out some, you know, I'll help you, you know, because Ed and, well, Ian can't talk because he's a dog, but it's like they're just throwing out just stuff because they can live in this chaos, you know?
Right.
Which isn't healthy, but it works for them.
I
you know?
especially love like the character dynamics that they have with each other, because like Spike throughout the entire thing is, I hate kids and I hate pets.
Yeah.
You know, and I hate people that just mooch off my goddamn ship.
It's kids, pets, like, yeah, kids like pets, and like, how did he say? He always says like he's like he does say that to Jet, but it's like with women, it's like loud women or something.
Or like, yeah,
like aggressive women or something like that. And he's like, why do we have all three on this ship right now? You know, it's so funny. But yeah, I mean, I just think we'll get to the live action in a second, but it's just like the anime to me, it doesn't tie off things, which I know that's what a lot of like criticism and people in the sense of maybe have problems with the anime.
It leaves things very open.
And it does. Yeah.
And because
even the end, like, does Spike die?
Yeah, even that. Because you have Ed and I don't think we're going to be spoiling anything by saying what happens at the end of the anime that ended in 1999.
Yeah, we can spoil. I mean, there's no point of not spoiling.
Right. So you have Ed and Ein just kind of leave the ship because Ed kind of just realizes that she needs to do her own thing. She's not really welcome on the ship anymore and stuff like that. The ship's falling apart at this point. Not physically, but like stably with everybody on the ship. They're kind of falling out at this point. Faye goes to try and like solve the mystery of her identity. She has all the clues that she needs, and she just goes off to try and solve that. Spike finally goes up against Vicious, who is this kind of foreboding background character throughout the entire show.
Yeah.
That he really doesn't show up much. He's only in a couple episodes, and then
I think it's like 4.
Yeah, it's
out of 26.
Yeah, it's not much at all. Like, he even gets introduced pretty early on. Like, I think almost episode like 3 or something like that. He gets introduced,
and his
and you don't see him
dialogue's
a while.
probably like maybe a page. I would think if you'd see a script, it's like maybe 2.
Right.
You know.
So you have him finally going up against Spike, and you know, then that kind of battle leaves with a little question mark of, okay, what happened at the end of that battle? And then Jet is just still trying to do what he can to survive.
Yeah. In Jet's past, you know, it's like he was a cop that kind of was framed for something that, you know, he didn't do, and he loses his arm, and the guy kind of like fucks up his whole life, so he has to leave and basically become like a vagabond,
right,
of like his bounty hunter life, where he obviously just wants to be a simple guy, and he can't, and that's like his struggle, which is a really cool thing that I do say the anime doesn't do well on. That it actually Phase is like kind of overshadowed a lot too, but I would actually way rather Jet being more focused on, because the whole anime is focused on Spike.
Yeah.
If you have to pin it down on that. And, you know, it's like he had this thing in the syndicate where he had an affair with Julia, who was with Vicious, who was like running the syndicate he was in. And she slept with him and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you can't sleep with, you know, your boss's girl.
Right.
But even for right
Well, it
and
was
wrong,
also like Vicious and Spike were like best friends.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like you're like fucking your best friend's girl, basically. Yeah. And you're in a mob. So it's like that's only going to go, you know, up.
Right. Yeah.
You know, nothing bad's going to happen there.
Totally fine. No problems to occur here.
But I think that is what we'll get into with the live action too, is the amount of like mystery that Spike past, even though he is the centralized character with that, it's hard to like really pick apart Faye, Ed, and Jet's kind of storyline throughout the anime because they don't give you much.
Right.
And it kind of like you could be doing podcasts for days about that and be like,
And it's all going to be theories.
it's all fan fiction basically. But it's like Spike's is almost the same, but you just have more meat to it.
Yes.
And yeah, basically he just, him and Julia like had a affair through Vicious. It's like there's this triangle going on. And I just think with the anime, what's cool is Spike is, and the point I think of Cowboy Bebop is they're all running from their past. They're all dealing with these past struggles and things they just like can't really get a handle on. And it's just like life. It's so hard to like, if you fucked up that bad, to really make, like, especially if you're running away from it, like to like put that all aside. And that's why it's so interesting of a show, I think, in the anime sense, where Spike, especially he has it on the extreme side because he's in a freaking, mob.
Right. Yeah.
And he, he's just trying to like have all these people not kill him, while he's trying to kill people for money.
He's trying to bounty hunt people while still running from people that want him dead.
So it's like he's in the mix of, people doing the wrong, which would obviously mix in with the syndicate of whatever it is in any way, shape, or form. So it's like, why would you ever get in this kind of job? You might as well be a clerk at a 7-Eleven. You'd be fucking happy for the rest of your life, But that's not Spike's MO. He has to live on the line. And one of his famous quotes of like him being, he has a fake eye and like he sees one eye through the future and one eye through the past. And he like tells that to Faye before he goes off and like basically dies, I guess. But, it's like that's what's like interesting about it. And I like that Vicious too there is no main bad guy of this. There's no one trying to destroy the world. There's no there is no actual like villain. Like Vicious is a villain, but he's not really. He's just a bad guy.
He kind of shows up like unexpectedly, but
he just hates Spike.
Yeah.
Like he really like it's like you could get into politics of like mob bosses and stuff, but I'm like Vicious probably doesn't give a fuck of like him doing, it's like, are they making money? He's like, I just want Spike dead. So he's probably like the worst gangster ever because they're like, what do you, and obviously he overtakes the syndicate because he just is obsessed with killing Spike. So he is the worst criminal in the entire world because he's not trying to like make profit. He's not trying to like build the syndicate. He's like, I just want this guy that slept with my girlfriend.
I want him dead.
Yes. And I don't care what goes down. And it's just so cool and so fits the theme of Vicious is a like basically like a samurai and Spike is this like martial artist, like gunslinger. And they have just this, it's just so cool of them like fighting and them wanting to kill each other. Is just like something you want, even though it's like you don't want Spike to get hurt. And that's like why
you want to see him come to a conclusion.
Yeah. And even like that climactic part of like the last episode, of Real Folk Blues Part 2, it's just like him meeting Vicious at the like the pinnacle of the end of the show is just like, I think great too. Even with Ballad of Fallen Angels, which kind of goes into the live action we can talk about too, but it's just, even with the slow amount of like 26 episodes, you have 5 to 6 episodes, you get Vicious and Spike dialogue and like backstory. I just think it's so powerful. And it doesn't need the whole show to do that because I think it gives away from that the point that all the other like fillers and other stuff in between, like Jet's story, Faye's story, just makes all that stuff more important and more cool and more, even like the one episode when they all die. Like there's like a whole fuck off episode where the space alien just like basically kills everybody. And it's like, it's just like a totally like turd episode, but that's why Cowboy Bebop's so cool, and that's why you can invest yourself in these characters and stuff. So
Yeah, you can basically see them going into any situation. It's these
Yeah.
characters that you're following. It's not the plot of the show, really.
for sure, yeah. So in the wake of your podcast, because I think we could talk about the anime forever, because I could. Let's slowly go into the the live action. So we're here. We're talking about the Netflix live action 2021 live action Cowboy Bebop now. So what was your first impression seeing it?
My first impression of it was enjoyable. So when it comes to a lot of these live action adaptations, they're usually just not fun. They lose the concept of what you're looking for in like a show by trying to be either so close to the source material that it just becomes boring that you're just checking boxes off a list. And that's where we have something like Attack on Titan and The Coming In. And then we have ones where they just go, I don't know, just here's the names of the characters, just throw a script in there. And that's where we get like Dragon Ball Evolution. So it's nice that we have something that's that nice middle ground where I think the characters are fairly consistent with their anime counterparts. They do the story a little bit more serialized, though. This is definitely made, like, if the anime came out today, I feel like this is closer to how it would have gone down, especially with the structure of the episodes and everything. And what their goal was overall for the show, because they were just leading these little plot lines along, and they put a huge focus on Spike this season. And I think they fairly much closed out his arc this season, which gave way for us to move into some other arcs and kind of what they alluded to at the end with Ed showing up, as there's this new arc that's going to be started that Spike's going to be involved with, but it's not about Spike. And I was really curious to see where they were going to go with that and everything like that. Sadly, we already know the news. There will not be a season 2. Netflix has decided to cancel.
We can't do a part 2 of this podcast?
Yeah, there's no part 2 for this podcast.
Maybe in like 20 years when like Twitter and all the social media is like, oh, it's... But then John Cho will be like, all the people will be like too old.
Yeah.
They have to recast everybody.
No, I'd want to see that show still.
Yeah.
Everybody's old, but they're still trying to act young.
That'd actually be more on point of like reenacting the anime almost. Like
A little bit.
you know.
Yeah, Ed's now like a 30-year-old.
Ed's now basically Spike in the Syndicate, but
Right.
like as a
but still
hacker.
playing as Ed.
Yeah. But like knows where Spike is, but like the Syndicate doesn't know. But she's like, the only reason why she's part of the Syndicate is because she knows where Spike is, and that's her like kind of card that she can play, I guess.
Totally going into fanfic territory now.
Yeah. This is nothing to do with the live action movie that Ed's in 20 seconds of. So
Yeah.
Not even that 10.
But yeah, I gotta say, I think that the way that they did this one is definitely more serialized. It's very plot heavy, and it's not as flavor of the week as we got with the anime.
Yeah.
Which is one point of contention that I've seen a lot of people make, and I agree with it. It's a different show made for a different time. And that doesn't necessarily make it bad, though. I think that's one distinction that people are going is, well, on the other one, it didn't matter what was happening in one episode. You could watch the next and skip an episode. You'd be fine. With this one, if you skip an episode, you're going to be completely lost. But this is a new time in television.
But you're watching 10 episodes compared to 26.
Right.
So it's like, what are you complaining about?
Right, yeah. Because, when the anime was coming out and stuff like that, like, serialized concepts were few and far between.
Yeah.
Very few shows actually had something like that. And a lot of shows that were, like, more of an episode of the week structure kind of moved toward a more, like, plotline base around, like, the early 2000s and everything like that, past when this show finished up. So I'm willing to bet that this show would have gone more that route if it was made during that time, and that's where the live action comes into play.
But could you say, though, since each episode was about an hour, I mean, that's almost 20 episodes.
almost, but they definitely threw a lot more meat into there.
Yeah, a lot of more bullshit.
There
That's what
is
I would
some
say.
bullshit in there and everything. Because obviously we have a lot more Vicious, and I don't like where they took his character. I'm gonna say that right off the bat. When it comes to the characters that I think they got the feeling wrong for, I think Vicious is one of them. Because he comes off as more of a maniac than a cold-blooded killer. Because in the anime, you had a very light-hearted Spike that was, very highly skilled, very light-hearted, but a little bit grumpy at times. And then you had this very cold-hearted, barely spoke any words, almost murderous, like somebody that Spike feared running into, and that made him like such a foreboding enemy to come across. Like when he showed up, you're like, oh shit, what's gonna happen now? And because that's how Spike would be reacting, and you'd see the crazy stuff Spike would do in other episodes, being able to disarm 4 people in a gunfight while also trying to keep like somebody alive because they need him for the bounty. So they're trying to be all creative with getting that person captured and protecting themselves from all these other people that they were surrounding themselves with. And you get to see like their creativity with those fights, and that Spike is capable of a lot. So when he comes up to somebody that he's like, oh no, that's that's going to be a big deal. And you kind of lost that with the Netflix adaptation where the tables were turned. Vicious didn't seem as foreboding anymore. Like there were multiple times where Spike could have taken him out and he didn't. It was more of a choice on Spike's terms to not take him out.
Oh, the sniper episodes, like
yeah,
what the fuck? That would never have gone down, and like literally, he would have killed him.
Not even in the anime, I don't think he would have, because Spike wasn't a killer. He didn't want to be in that life anymore. He was more focused on trying to bring in people alive. Even when Jet would suggest that they go in for like bounties, it's dead or alive, Spike would always be like, alive. We're bringing them in alive.
I think with what you were just talking about though, with like Vicious, which I 100% agree on all the stuff you said, is the point of where it compares to like the anime to even like the show. And I'm just agreeing with you on every point of it, because Vicious is fucking a disaster of a character in this live action. Spike is very tolerable and really good, and like I think John Cho like did a very good job of what he could have done. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that guy Vicious could. I mean, it's maybe not the actor's fault or whatever, but
the actor was fantastic in what he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, he was trying his best, I guess. Yeah. But
he was being told to play this manic, kind of obsessive.
But that's not
character.
The point.
That's not who Vicious is. Yeah. But that's not on the actor. But I don't think the actor's at fault on this one at all, because that is what the story was trying to push.
I think it's at fault because he should have fucking watched the anime. But like, dude, you have like literally a page of source material you could literally do. Like, you don't have to watch a lot. Like, not even all Cowboy Bebop. Like, again, 5 episodes of a 26 season. It's like, but whatever. But I think what is cool about Spike and Vicious dynamic that they lose in the live action that is more better represented in the anime is, yeah, it's not like Vicious like taught Spike. Like, Vicious wasn't Spike's senpai or like his. Mm-hmm. They were more or less equals, but like Vicious, according to like I guess what it is, it's like was already in the syndicate, and Spike came into the syndicate, and they just matched, and that's why they became friends and they became good buddies, and their falling out and all stuff was so tragic. It's like they don't do that in the live action thing. It's like they don't even like express that. They don't even like go into their like friendship. They just basically like, oh, I fucked your girlfriend. Like you fucked my girlfriend. Like it, like they kind of just like run to that too fast. I think they don't even like, for even how little the anime like shows their friendship, you actually feel they were buddies, like them like backing up to each other and like like them shooting out in the alleyway and stuff. And they like both smile at each other. It's like the only time you see Vicious with a gun.
Yeah.
And it's like you actually know they like had some like friendship and like camaraderie. And in like the live action, this is what's kind of upsetting because, you know, people are like, oh, you can't keep comparing it to the anime, but you kind of have to. There's no other way to do it, because if you don't, you just think these two assholes hate each other for no reason but fucking this girl.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of like stupid to think about it that way, where there's so much more like stuff that Vicious and Spike had that they didn't even like like in the anime, they like don't even have dialogue with that you understood. So it's like, it does suck that they thought like, hey, let's have Vicious just like talk more and be more of like a dummy. Like,
Yeah,
it's
he
like
was. I wouldn't even say dummy. He was just more manic.
a crybaby. Yeah.
I would say a little crybaby toward the end.
He cried in the show.
Yeah.
So it's like you're trying to be, and there, what we talked about in the anime, it's like there was no like main bad guy. Vicious was a bad guy, but it's like he's not trying to destroy the world. But in like the live action, it's like he was like the Godfather almost. Like it's like he was
he was the foreboding like threat throughout the entire series.
And I think that like is like a bad idea to do, where it's like, you know, they could have still done that, where it's like, and the show does a really good job at like pacing out a lot of like, you know, like Faye's story and like Jet's story and stuff. So it's like they did kind of take the stuff where they were trying to do how the anime was, where like this is like Spike's episode, this is Jet's episode, this is Faye's episode, but they just kind of like fucked up so much stuff of like, you know, Vicious and Julia, because that encapsulated all the other like minutia throughout the show, with all the other like campy bullshit stuff that I thought in the anime, even an episode that didn't really make sense or like didn't have much value to the entire story, you still remembered it. And this, you were like, man, I have to remember all this fucking shit and like all this like storyline from the last episode to this episode to this, and like,
I mean, that's when you move to a more like
to Jet's daughter, to like all, like you just had more stuff to like put in your head. Like it was just more Bebop than I thought you needed, and that's why I was so disappointed with like the live action.
Yeah, well, that's when you move to a more serialized kind of aspect to it. That's what comes along with it, is you're going to have a lot more story behind these characters.
Sure. And they were still piling in all the fan service.
There were some fan servicey kind of things that were
every episode. Every single episode was literally 20 episodes of Cowboy Bebop put into one, however you want to put that. Because it's like even the first episode was the beginning of the movie, just done in a different setting. So it's like they're taking, and that I get that, you know, like you got to play towards the audience, and it's nice to see that, but like literally line for line, like carrying that weight, they're literally taking all these like references and like just kind of like stuff that like had nothing to do with the, like throughout the whole anime, they never said like, you got to carry that weight, and they said that in the show, and it's like that was always at the ending as a like, that's for the fans, like that has nothing to do with the show. It's like, I mean, it has to do with the show, but you know, it's like then they're like, you got a space cowboy, and like they like said that in the show. It's like that's so fucking stupid. Like don't put that in your freaking dialogue. And that's why it's like, that's why they like made all these characters so stupid. And like they had, what the one guy in Jupiter Jazz who was like the trans guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he was just basically a bartender throughout the whole show. And like Gren, I think his name is.
Yeah, he's
So
also
like,
in the anime too.
He is, but he's in Jupiter Jazz Part 1 and 2. And it's like that's his episode about him, and he knew Vicious, and he, you know, he got boosted with a bunch of drugs that changed him into a like female kind of mixed transgender person, under his, like, he didn't mean to have it happen, but he was just in the military and it happened like that way. And in this, he was just like a gay guy that worked at, or a trans person that worked at a bar. And it was, even in the first episode, it was just like, though, that's Gren. So you're like, that's fan service of like, because you obviously know this is like a weird character.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, I have to know that's the Jupiter Jazz Gren that actually has a very, and Vicious never talks to him or that person or whatever, but it's like, you have to know this person. It's like, God damn it. Like, you're trying to reboot it, I guess, for like Cowboy Bebop sense, but like, you're explaining too much and you're throwing too much into it, where I just think that's why I have so much like upset. Like, that's why I'm so upset with the show in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Because the acting and like the characters are pretty top notch for like a live action kind of thing. Like John Cho and like the guy that played Jet fucking nailed it. Which,
yes,
like that guy, I mean, I can't pronounce his name and I won't try, just like out of like, just respect for him. But it's like, he was Bushman in fucking Nick Cage season 2. Isn't that weird? I looked him up because I'm like, this guy had like, he's a very talented actor. I'm like, what the hell else did he do? And I looked up like his Nick Cage stuff because I never watched that season. And it's so wild to see him playing a completely different role. Like, he has the whole like kind of like Bob Marley like drawl to like his like talking. He's like doing like, capoeira to like freaking Nick Cage. And then he's literally speaking like Jet Black, who, it's like, I guess in the anime was black, but like, who cares?
he was.
Yeah. But it's like, again, he sounds exactly like that voice actor.
Oh,
and it's like,
dead
that's
on.
fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Because like, it almost sounds like you just overdubbed it.
Yeah, and he has the same like charisma.
Yeah.
He was
It's not corny at all.
No.
Yeah.
Like I'll say, John Cho, I love him as Spike. They did change his character a little bit. They made him a little bit more cocky, which I can get behind. It made the show a little bit more entertaining.
Hurt,
it didn't hurt his character at all for him to be a little bit more cocky, because they kind of just
was a badass that
Right.
was cocky. He just held it back a little bit.
He just
more.
wasn't cocky in the show. He was just more grumpy in the anime than he was in this.
But he had that, like in the anime, he had the anime trope of just like, hey, I'm a lazy person, but I can kick your ass. You know,
he's
he's
like, the badass that doesn't look at no explosions.
Yeah, that's basically cocky in the 90s of anime.
So it didn't feel like a massive change that ruined his character at all.
Yeah.
I think he was great as Spike. Faye's character, they definitely dive more into her character, but the little bit of changes that they made, I agree with some of them. I don't with others. Like the changes that they made for her character that I love is they made her a badass bounty hunter instead. Because in the anime, she's just a thief. She's a lucky flyby thief that she constantly screws up and stuff. Like, she gets stranded in the middle of nowhere at one point on her ship because she didn't have fuel enough to get where she was going.
Yeah.
She constantly gets captured, everything like that.
She fucks up basically every episode.
Almost every episode in the anime, she fucks up somewhere. And I loved in the live-action adaptation, they kind of made her own badass. Like, instead of... because she still has the same backstory, which they kept very consistent. She had a disease. I can't remember what it was exactly, but she was going into cryo sleep, and this was on Earth. Eventually, she got woken up. She doesn't have any of her memories because of the cryo sleep, and somebody said, hey, I'm your father, I'm your mother, and here's your identity, and let me take everything you have and just leave you stranded now. And they played with the same thing, but this time, instead of going to like a life of being a thief, she decides to be a life of being somebody that's trying to find her identity and create a new identity that she can be proud of.
Yeah.
And I love that. It definitely adds a lot more to her character than, oh, here's the pair of tits on the ship.
Yeah, but you remember in the anime, like how funny that was when she found the guy that like sold her to basically like got her into debt,
Oh yeah.
And it's such a hilarious episode because from what I've like researched and stuff, it's like the character of that's like if you have to like look at the anime thing, but he's based off George Clooney. So it's like that guy's supposed to look, like this young George Clooney, which is like who she falls in love with before she got frozen. So he looked obviously like a young George Clooney who obviously any girl would fall in love with in this kind of context. And then later becomes, she wakes up, randomly, like not, she's supposed to like be still frozen and all this stuff. And she finds him and he's just this fat piece of shit. Like that's just like in debt even more, like doesn't have his life together and is still trying to play like, hey, yeah, I'm like a young George Clooney. Like,
Yeah.
I may have frozen you and put you in like, debt for your life and I'm still in debt. Like, it's like the anime, even though it's like, it's harder to like kind of like understand, but I just like, why wouldn't you have like, not saying like the live action needed to redo that, but I'm like, that was fucking perfect.
Yeah.
I just thought that was so funny.
It was hilarious, but I don't think it fit into where they wanted to go with her character.
For sure, yeah, because they wanted her to be more powerful.
They wanted her to be more powerful and independent and everything like that. They didn't want her to be just the damsel in distress, which I like.
But how is that not more powerful when you like realize you wake up from you were fucked over by this piece of shit that looked like George Clooney, then you realize he's a fat piece of shit and you beat the fuck out of him and throw him out in space. Like that's basically what happened in the anime.
Right. And that's where it comes into like a little bit of contention here because I like where they started to go with it. I hate where they ended it.
For sure.
With the mother showing back up and her kind of like trying to help her and become, in the end, became friends with her a little bit and stuff. It's like
it defaults her character.
It did. It was like I really liked the changes they were making with her until
but they didn't
that
hold
point.
on to it. This is why Netflix fucking sucks with their. Which I put down with like Watanabe, like his idea of what Cowboy Bebop was what it is and was what it was. So it's like you take it or leave it. But like Netflix just tried to pander too much with like everything going on in society now and popularity and stuff like that, which every usually show fucking falls under.
Right.
And Cowboy Bebop had to suffer with this, with all its fucking like just dumb stuff, which is why it's like they had a good idea with Faye, but they buckled under pressure,
follow through with it,
and it's like, why? You just keep going, keep going with what the idea you had with a good new idea with a character that otaku anime fucking nerds love. It's like, just do it, and they fucking didn't do it for no reason. So because it's like you can't say that it was like episode by episode because it's a binge.
No, it's
Netflix.
more of a serialized
So
thing.
they knew they had to fucking bow to whoever it is, and it's like, it just sucks, and that's why even. Go ahead, say what you're gonna say.
I do have a kind of idea, like I could be completely off on it, but why they did that is that episode felt more like the anime version of Faye and what she would have done, not the version of Faye that they created for the live action, because in the anime. She was more reliant on Jed and Spike. She was. She wasn't capable of handling these kind of things on her own.
She always came back to the Bebop,
right? And
she couldn't handle herself.
Yeah, she didn't trust Spike and Jed at all during this time either. In the anime, she never really trusted them at all. She kind of just lived on their ship, and
she used them for the more part until she realized that she needed them.
Right. And I think they were trying to pull that in that episode and everything because they were kind of going, well, this is how it would have been in the anime. We got to pander to the people in the anime. But in the end, they ended up ruining her character in the show that they had built up to be better than the anime. Because, granted, everything could have played out the same in the anime, and I guarantee people would be going, oh, they changed Faye's character and they ruined her. She's terrible now. I hate her. That Netflix, needs to suck a dick and die. And no matter what, people are going to be upset about it. And I think they were trying to find like this middle ground between the badass and showing a little bit from the anime, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of that I feel like is because of that whole like, oh, they're ruining my childhood by changing the character, and they trying to be just middle ground it, and instead they should have just gone balls to the wall with the new version of Faye. And I
For
really,
sure. I totally agree.
they started to do more of that after that episode, and I was like, this is exciting, And I like how she's being more like camaraderie for the rest of the team and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Especially when it came to like toward the end of the show or the end of like this season. Well, we're not getting a season 2. I guess it's a show, and where she's like, I've got to make my own path now. If I need you guys, I'll let you know. If you need me, let me know. But I've got a goal to reach, and it's gonna separate us because you guys have something else going on. And I love that because it kind of showed a little bit of a different character with Faye, and it's going in the right direction for a serialized show, which I was hoping that like a season 2 in my head prior to it getting canceled was going to be one that focused more on Faye's story of her becoming her own person. A little bit.
Like a couple just like Faye episodes.
Right, because we
Which
basically...
I totally would have seen that.
Yeah, we got the episodes with Spike and everything like that. And I feel like the next season would have been more on Jet dealing with Spike and their relationship and everything like that. More on Faye and then obviously Ed. Yeah.
And like Ed filling in the void of Fade as like Ed's character and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that would be definitely the next season, because like, I would guess for the next season it would have been like almost like Spike would be like too fucked up and just like kind of out of commission for like the first couple just after like what happened, and he just like found Ed. And like kind of like them introducing Ed to the Bebop with Jet and like that whole antic, and like she's like, oh well, I'm like this hacker, and like showing her skills and stuff like that and stuff, and then showing like Faye obviously her side of like her adventuring out into the world and or the galaxy, I guess. But it's like, yeah, I could see that. But again, that's like, it goes more of like, that's what Cowboy Bebop is. So it's like, they were on the right track, which is like sad that that show is canceled. But it's like, I just don't want to see the whole Julia storyline happen. That was such a disappointment.
I didn't like that storyline with her taking over for the Syndicate because it didn't really fit in. Her character flipped completely.
And that's where it's going to happen, where it's like the season 2, if that ever happened, would be what we just talked about. It would be like this like cool stuff that we like actually are kind of interested in, of like Ed having a thing. Like they'd maybe do an episode with her dad, like that kind of thing. Like even the anime had that. And, like Faye doing stuff, and then it would go back to Spike coming back. And then it's like Spike, got to break out Vicious, and now Vicious and Spike got to take down Julia and her bad people. It's like
her
God,
mom.
That sounds so freaking stupid. You know what I mean? Like that just sounds retarded, because that's the only way that the show can end now. The way that it ended is that Spike and Vicious become buddies and take down Julia. I don't see how it ended any other way.
Right.
And like I can't watch that. I can't. That's so dumb. It's so dumb. It doesn't make any sense, and Julia needs to be shot with a shotgun. That's how it happens and how it should be happening.
Right. Yeah, I can say that's one of the changes that I didn't like. I did like the little bit of the dynamic change with Spike and Jet after Jet discovers that he's a part of the Syndicate and everything.
Yeah.
Because they play on that a whole lot more in this live action adaptation.
Yeah.
Than they
I
did
like
in
the
the
Jet
anime.
backstory. That's pretty cool.
I did like that, especially with him like
and
having
they
that
play
trouble.
with it, like with the whole like filters of like the noir kind of.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
style. Like that's fun. And it's like they even have like the music and like them dressing up like old school, which they did do in the anime, but it's just like flashbacks. And since it's anime, it's more like it just like cuts to that, you know. But like in the live action, they actually, it's like, this is like black and white Sin City kind of look, and I love that because that is what Jet Black's like, Black Dog Strut is the episode where it's about his backstory. It's like that is what it is. Him with the fedora and just being an old school cop. Like they did do that very well, and I like that.
Yeah, I definitely like that. I liked where they kind of pushed their dynamic a little bit with them being on separate sides in the past life, especially with Jet being like unable to trust Spike at the end. I like how they left that cliffhanger there because that does change their dynamic going forward, especially if for season 2 everything that would have happened and for that. And it was a great place to kind of end off the season with their dynamic. And I would have loved to see where that was going. Because you had these two people that were best friends that didn't know anything about each other. And as soon as they discover the truth about each other, it kind of breaks them apart a little bit.
Yeah.
And you know that it's going to build them back together, but I wanted to see how that would play out.
See, that's like where even this could be like an anime or a live action thing that they could have took, I think, the role of like Cowboy Bebop and all that stuff is like, why not make a whole thing of like how Spike and Jet became friends? Like that could be a whole series right there.
They could do something with that. I'm willing to bet that we've probably seen more flashbacks with it as they kind of rekindled their friendship based on like more of like their adventures together and stuff and how they met.
Seeing that's like my big disappointment of the live action compared. Again, it's not compared to the anime. It's just the live action because the live action had a lot of new ideas and they did try to do a lot of new stuff. And it is an okay show. Like it wasn't freaking like dog shit. Like it wasn't something that I couldn't get past the first episode or something like that. But I was just so disappointed of they just had all these ideas that we just like basically talked about. And it's like they just either filled it in with the anime and it's like, all right, you are doing a new Cowboy Bebop, but like if you're going to do a new Cowboy Bebop, like do a new Cowboy Bebop.
Right.
And even if you're filling in things like, obviously Spike has to be in the syndicate and like all these like things, but it's just like they were just doing stuff like verbatim and like scene by scene to please. It goes back to the fan service stuff. That's just what pissed me off, where so much of the stuff, and that's where like the fighting and all the stuff, like I'm not saying you can compare fighting and like choreography and like that to like anime. That's like completely different, but they dropped the ball on all that stuff. The action and like the suspense of like this show was fucking terrible. I'll just say that.
I'm going to have to disagree with you when it comes to choreography of the like fight scenes. I thought the fight scenes were great.
What? Are you blind?
No.
The only good fight scenes were the gunfights, I thought. I thought anything that had guns was like cool.
There were a couple good kind of like fight scenes that they had. Like while I didn't enjoy the scene overall with Vicious, his funeral and stuff like that, or not funeral, his death sentence.
Okay.
I liked how that played out. I liked their usage of like angles and everything like that to like kind of make you go, wait. Oh, so I like where they're going with it. And then they have this nice little sequence of showing like his badassness and everything like that. And I like that. I also love cheesy kung fu movies though. So
this was like the worst of like, but like in Cowboy Bebop, the anime was like, it's like Spike's based off Bruce Lee. It's like he's based off like martial art kung fu movies, but it's like, I just don't see why, like, it's like, it just was so slow. Like, every fight and, like, him doing, like, Wing Chun Kung Fu, like, and, like, Spike's fighting style, it's like, and I know John Cho is, like, Carol and Kumar, so he's not, like, a martial artist, like, Jason Statham Rock or whatever, but I'm like, God damn, like, it just looks so terrible to me. I just thought it was, like, super slow. It just didn't look cool. And it just sucked. And that's why, again, like, I was more interested in any time they like were shooting at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the complete opposite of how I loved the anime. Because,
Right.
you know, it's like shooting an anime that's all the same.
It's not a big deal.
You know, but it's like there's in Cowboy Bebop, there's literally probably like 5 fights through the 26 episodes, and they're all fucking phenomenal. And they're like literally not even a minute long. So I'm like,
I will say that the fights in the anime are better, but I didn't think that the fights, like choreography wise and everything like that, in the live action were terrible.
I thought they were awful.
I enjoyed them.
All right, well, there we go. We got the verses going.
We got the verses going.
Finally.
Yeah. I definitely thought that they were done right and everything like that. Like, they were a little bit more slow and, like, almost, I guess, ballet-like, but I think that kind of fit more with, like, the way that the show was trying to present itself in this one. Is it wasn't that same fast-paced anime, let's get this done in, like, 20 minutes. It was more of that slow build up to moments, and those moments usually had some good payoff with them.
I just disagree, and I just don't see why. And again, these are just like little parts, and it's just like I can just remember that first part. Like he even does like the Jeet Kune Do like punch, and it's like literally like one Mississippi, 2 Mississippi punches, and I'm just like, even like a idiot that just seen like one Bruce Lee movie would punch faster than that, and it just didn't make sense to me. And that's like it's not even like John Cho doing it wrong. I'm like, how do you let that go over? And it just I just was so upset with it, and like it just kept going on, and there were some that like it would get good, and then you'd be like, then it would slow down, and I'm like, why is this slow? It's not supposed to be. I'm not saying it has to be like fucking lightning fast, but I'm like, Jesus Christ, like this needs to be better, and it never was to me.
See, for me, it tickled that itch for me of like those kind of choreographed fight scenes with like the extreme detail to like the decision making and stuff that they were making. I enjoyed it for those ones.
All right, good example that will bring it all back here is the very first episode, which is a you know, they basically took the first episode of Cowboy Bebop and they did alter it a lot, you know, Faye's in it, and you know, Vicious is in it, like everybody's in it besides Ed and, you know, Ein.
Right.
But Spike barely fights.
Your dog doesn't like that episode either.
Dudley, shut up. But Dudley, Spike barely fights Asimov, which is the entire point of that fucking first episode, is the Asimov versus Spike fight, which they never had him in a sombrero, which again, it could be like cultural appropriation or whatever, but it's like the purpose of him having the sombrero and like the
well, it was to hide his identity.
No, it's to hide his movements to a guy that's on drugs that makes things slow down.
Oh, yeah.
That's the whole point of the episode. He's like, because, you know, Asimov has the red eye and he uses it to slow down time. And they do talk about it in the show, but like, it's just like this. It's just like, bah, bah. Like, and they use even slow down graphics to the slowest fight I've ever fucking seen in a fucking Netflix show. And it's just like, I'm not saying they can react that actual fight in the anime, but I'm like, Jesus Christ, you took the whole point of what Spike was being a badass about, of him knowing that this guy is selling this drug that does this and using it to be a drug dealer, and Spike just fucking owning him. And they do the same thing. Like, they have like the same setup and all this stuff, but God, it's so bad. It's just so fucking terrible. Like, he does like 1-2 and like holds them, and then he's like, "Yeah, you shouldn't be doing red eye." And then like he starts shooting. Like, it's just so fucking dumb. Like, it's like you could have like just made a cooler fight. Like, you don't have to have the same one. And like, again, it doesn't have to be like, you know, Marvel like super high intense. But I'm like, come on, like, that fight could have been way better. That's all that fight was. You don't even get a fight like that till 20, like, no, until like 10 episodes later in the anime.
Right.
Maybe the second episode, I guess, but still, it's like the anime didn't like fucking put every fucking sweet anime. Like, Spike didn't fight a lot through that whole show.
No, it was few and far between, but they definitely made sure it was like a big moment when it happened.
And Asimov shot everybody in the first episode. And it's like, for a guy to be basically on meth, like Mars meth, it's like the point of him being so rambunctious is he didn't need a gun. But in the first episode, he just shot everybody. And then like that takes the point of him being obsessed with Red Eye. And I'm like, and they still try to be like, Red Eye is cool, do the Red Eye. And I'm like, no, like in the anime, he kills people with guns. And in the show, he just shot everybody. And
Right.
It's like, what are you doing? You're taking the point of like the purpose of him being on this like super crazy drug that's like, made up. And it's like, that's what I was just upset with. Like, you're making fun of the concept of the first episode that you're trying to manipulate. Just copy it. Like, literally, just you don't need guns.
Yeah,
Somebody already got killed on a set for having a gun on there. It's like just have them beat people up. And even in the anime, it's like they used imagery for like they had the first person thing of him just like going and like dodging bullets and just like killing people. It's like it wasn't even fight scenes. So it's like, how is that more like how's that less like, I don't know. That's what I was so upset about, because he just was like bang bang bang, like I'm on Red Eye. It's like, it's just lazy. I just thought it was lazy.
To me, it came off as more like McCree from like Overwatch, of just kind of, he can massive target multiple people. Yeah, it wasn't so much like hand-to-hand combat as it was the, being able to like gunsling a little bit better. I didn't think it took away from him as much for me. Especially when they would show like his perspective of everything going on, and it's basically almost looks like it's going at 2 frames per second for his vision. But internally, he's processing everything so much faster than what we can perceive.
But even all the fan service and stuff that they were doing, they didn't even take the part of like Spike punching him in the nose.
No, they didn't. They missed the opportunity for that.
Why wouldn't you have done that? You could have made that, especially to see that live action would have been really cool. Of just like like how crazy, like how hard does that have to be? Of like literally just like Spike just fighting somebody, and like this guy just like cracked out on whatever, Red Eye, and just that whole, and that part looks so good even today's standard from a 90s anime. It's like, I love that fight. To see that put into live action, and that guy, that he looked like Asimov. I'm like, you got a good actor. It's like, just have them fucking fight. Like, why didn't that happen? They just literally shot and jumped in a car. I'm like, it just pissed me off so much.
There should have been a little bit more to that, but at the same time, I think that episode was trying to be the intro of like, this is Cowboy Bebop, but we're doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah, and that's like Faye gets introduced.
Yeah,
because she shot at them too. That's like kind of why they break up the fight, because Faye obviously wasn't there in the original, so that's why they fight, because it's just Spike and Asimov.
Right.
But then Faye shows up because she's like, I'm getting him too. And he's like, no, you're not.
Well, no, she was after the wife.
But again, like they're both like after each other. Like,
yeah.
There's just a big scramble. And then it's like, so they can't have like they can't just like stand
the
up
one-on-one kind of thing. Yeah.
So it makes sense in that, but it's just disappointing because it's like,
I can see the disappointment with that one, but at the same time, you gotta have this weird area of like splitting hairs where you're trying to make your own adaptation of something. How far are you gonna go with the references and everything? Because there's a point where the references become too much, and then at the same point you're going, well, they should have referenced this and this and this.
Well, and that's I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
but the references they pick are fucking terrible.
I'll be honest, I 100% agree.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
that.
I'm not saying like, even like everything aside, like, even all that, if Spike still just like socked him in the like in the nose, like, and did that shot we just talked about, and they even didn't have that fight, I would have been a little more happy.
Okay.
because that is such an iconic part where Spike beats the fuck out of him in the anime, and he's on drugs. It's just like, and he's, Asimov's is like, why is this guy just like owning me? And there's just that one point where it just shows him getting punched in the face. It's like they could have had all the stuff and just had that part. So that's fan service and that's a reference. But they didn't do that. They did all the other stuff of like, I know it's splitting hairs and stuff, but again, I just felt like whoever fucking watched the anime and was a part of this process just picked the worst things to be like splitting hairs for.
Right.
And that's where I'm like, dude, this is like a old ass show that's very popular. And this is with everything. This is with every live action. It's like, it just seems like with all these people that go to, it's like the Avatar movie and The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
It's just like, you just wonder who is watching these things. It's like they're literally people that have no idea. They know how to make a movie. They know how to do all these things, but they don't understand the source material.
Right.
So it's like you can make something new and different and like have these things, but then they just pick and choose just like the most bullshit, like wrong things that, yeah, you can't please everybody, but it's like, God damn, like if I can look at that, it's right there. It's so easy. It's making your work so much easier to do as a TV maker or whatever it may be. You know what I mean? It's like,
but I think
but they're like, no, we have to build like, it's like Asimov might have been like a fucking cyborg, like Terminator, and like they would have done that and like, oh, actually he's a cyborg and the Red Eye didn't do anything. And like they make it more complex and it's like, stop it. Stop it.
Yeah, there's some changes that they made that I like. There's some changes they made that I don't like.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the changes they made, I understand the changes they made, and it doesn't always work.
It doesn't, and it's not going to be.
Yeah.
And again, like I am I'm just a nerd in the sense. I'm never going to love this show, but it is okay. And literally, my only big pet peeve, honestly, is literally just all the Spike stuff. I just hate all the Vicious Spike, Julia bullshit. Everything else is kind of disappointing in some ways, but I can care less about it. I just hated Fearless. We didn't even talk about that. Spike.
His old name. Yeah.
That's why. His name's fucking Spike.
Yeah.
Do you need to really have him have a nickname?
I think it fell more in line with like everybody in the syndicate had a nickname. Like,
Stop.
Vicious isn't his
Stop.
actual name, like kind of thing.
Stop. The guy's. There's a cop named Jet.
Yeah,
I think that's his name. Like, I mean, who fucking cares? Like, again, like you don't need to worry about that. It's okay. It's an anime. It's a science fiction show.
Yeah.
It's somebody and Spike's not even science fiction. That's Spike. Like, just relax. Like, Fearless. Like, that's so freaking dumb. Like, I mean, Vicious. Even at the time of like when you hear that in an anime, you're like, oh, like, ooh, creative named the bad guy Vicious. Like, I bet that took a long time, but that's just like how he was made, and that's just his name.
Yeah.
But they didn't even go into that. Like they could have gone into some dumb fucking bullshit of like why his name is Vicious, because when he was like born, he was born under a Ravenclaw.
But I guarantee if they did that, you'd be complaining about it.
I would, because I would be pissed. It's just like Spike. Spike is Spike,
right?
and it's like that's already a pretty wacky name. So why does his name to be Fearless?
I think when that change came in, that was mostly because they needed a reason why Fearless wasn't able to know that Spike was still alive.
But that's what like. It's in the galaxy. Like Star Wars. Did anyone change their names?
No, but at the same time, nobody knew that Anakin was Darth Vader except for Palpatine, and he wasn't exactly throwing it in like the Daily Bugle out there.
For sure. But again, it's like, this is the galaxy world we're talking about. It's not everyone lives on Earth.
Well, at the same time, the cowboy, I'm trying to remember, the bounty hunting show would always like show the bounties that people were getting and stuff like that, and they'd show the names.
Yeah.
So if you have a mob that wants you dead, you'd probably change your name when you start going into something that's going to put you into more public spotlight.
It's just all right. I mean, we can obviously argue this all day.
I mean,
but
yeah,
I just think it's just dumb.
I think for the world, like the name itself is dumb and everything like that they create for
It's so
him.
corny.
Like, if they would have created like a different name for him that wasn't like a one word kind of,
it just, I just don't think it
verb.
needed. I just don't think it needed to happen.
For the world that
'Cause
they were
don't-
creating,
They
I can
don't.
see it.
They
fitting
don't
in.
even explain nicknames.
They didn't, but they did kind of show that there were nicknames in this world because all the crime bosses that were a part of the syndicate also had nicknames for their name. So it kind of showed that was like a part of the culture there that
Just
nobody knew each other's
Too
name.
much work for no payoff.
The payoff didn't come yet. That's the problem.
You're gonna call Spike fearless?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So why would you do that? Why would you? That's like calling Superman fucking like
Clark Kent.
not that. Not even that. That's actually a more appropriate name. But it's like it's calling any superhero name that they have a like another name now.
Kal-El.
No, like let me rename Spider-Man for you. Not even Peter Parker.
Miles Morales.
Nope. Peter Parker's name now
Gwen Stacy.
is Sticky Guy. And that's how you have to say it for the rest of Spider-Man career. Like
Okay.
is just
Well, it wasn't that his
Webman.
name went to Fearless. That was the nickname he was known by.
It just was. It just doesn't feel right. It's so lazy.
It
it's
is
so lazy.
Yeah, I wasn't
You can't
a fan
say
of it.
it's like you hear it and you're not like, oh, because even Vicious, it's like Vicious because he's vicious.
Right.
But it's like if he was introduced as vicious, you'd be like, that's so stupid. But he was always vicious, so it's like it's kind of grandfathered in. But Spike to be named Fearless it makes him sound like a fucking clown, and he's not a clown. He's like one of the greatest characters of all time. So like you're diminishing his persona, and it's like don't do that.
Right.
Just everything can be even the live action. Just don't do Fearless. He can still be Spike. He can still do all the stuff that happened in the live action. Just cancel out Fearless. That does not have to be in the show.
Yeah. Like I said,
That
I
would
don't
honestly
like that
be
one.
the one thing if I could have a wish and just like take it all out. If he could just not be Fearless, I would let everything else ride.
Really.
I really would. Honestly, that'd be my opinion on this. Is like they could have it all the stuff we just talked about in this podcast. I just really hate that he has a name Fearless. It's so dumb.
See, I agree. I didn't like that part, but in terms of where they were going with the story, I understand why they added that point into it.
Yeah.
Like I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
But I understand it. I understand where they were trying to go with it.
I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, like most of the things in this, I understand why they made the change.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, if I could magically erase something, that would be my one thing.
That's the one thing.
Yeah. And I would just shut my mouth for all the other stuff and just bite the bullet and just be like, this show's okay. As long as his name's just Spike, I'd be freaking fine with it. But yeah, I'm sure we could talk about this all day. We should probably wrap this up. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like I have a lot to bitch about with it, and it is, it's like with any live action adaptation, it's a tough project to do.
It's a weird string you have to kind of balance.
Yeah.
When
And-
it comes to adaptation versus new.
I don't think I brought this up, but because you talked about other stuff that obviously was anime adaptations and stuff like this, and it is harder. It's more of a feat to do a series because most things that have been like Attack on Titan and Death Note and like Full Metal Alchemist, they have all been movies,
Right.
and that's like more of a risk you can take of like doing an hour or whatever, like maybe like less than a 2-hour kind of like feature of a adaptation of an anime. And that's why I mean mostly why they suck, but I'm glad that Cowboy Bebop didn't take that route and did a 10 thing that they could stretch out, and like even if like a lot of the stuff that I said sucked and I was disappointed, but it's like they could at least like flex their muscles and like do stuff and like feel around and like play around with some ideas as Cowboy Bebop needs to be. Because if
Right.
this was like a 2-hour movie or something, whatever it may be, it'd be way more of a catastrophe, I think. So
Yeah. Like this, it's not perfect by any means, but
it's a big okay in my book.
for anime adaptations to live action, this is the best one we have right now.
And I watched all 10. I mean, like, again, like even watching some of these anime adaptations that are movies that it's like maybe 2 hours and stuff is like putting a gun to my head. You know what I
Right.
mean?
It's
So
tough to get through them.
to putting myself, and you know, I willingly watched all 10 episodes, and it just, yeah, like it's a good show. It's okay. It's
See, I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It was an enjoyable show. But when you come comparing it to the original,
yeah.
it takes a downslide. But if you think of it as its own kind of thing, like if this came out today, and there was no like prior reference material and everything like that, I think just the personality shift with Faye's character in that one episode wouldn't have fit. But I don't think that would have happened because that they were trying to keep more to the anime with that episode with her personality.
Yeah.
And a couple minor things where I'd be like, well, that scene was kind of lame, or this scene, I don't think that made any sense and stuff like that. I probably still would have found Vicious to be like a annoying kind of bad guy for it, but that's it. Outside of that, it was good. It's not like Death Note where it changed things. And it changed things drastically from the anime in a bad way, but the movie wasn't even good on its own merit.
Yeah.
Like
Like even if you didn't see,
right, if I'd never
like
seen
let's
Death
watch
Note,
this movie called Death Note.
yeah, I
like,
still
this
would have
movie
gone.
sucks.
This movie is terrible. I would have done the same thing with Attack on Titan. This movie is terrible. I started watching Tokyo Ghoul, and I was like, this movie is terrible. And Cowboy Bebop managed to stand on its own, as a good adaptation, I feel like, that made a couple things that is standing on its own as a show, very good. If you take all the I'm going to do all the criticisms against, Cowboy Bebop, which of course you're going to do that because there was a source material, you're going to compare it to what we have now.
Yeah, I feel like you cannot do that.
Right. It's nearly impossible to do that.
Because the show wouldn't be made without this.
Right. But if this came out now as its own original property, we didn't have the anime and everything like that, I think it would have held up. I think this would have been a very good show, on its own. And that's what I feel like. As an adaptation, it's good. As its own standalone thing, it's a very good show.
Yeah.
It was entertaining. I went through all 10 episodes and I wasn't going, oh man, this is boring. Pause and walk away and then I'll finish it
I fell asleep a couple times.
Oh, did you?
I'm the omega of the alpha here of I guess reviewing. But the other thing too, I would say that kind of irks me, but again, I'm glad that we talked about it in the beginning, that Yoko Kanno was a part of this. And it was nice that they brought in basically a lot of the people that made the anime
Yeah.
to be behind this, which is great, and but it's like I was disappointed that like Yoko Kanno was doing this for the music, but she basically it's just the Cowboy Bebop music.
Yeah.
And I'm like, not that she had to redo a whole score for this, but and again, why would you do that for a show? It's like you wouldn't redo Tank or something,
No.
It's like, but I just thought it was such a it's just like a ploy almost, they have Yoko Kanno. It's like they literally just bought the rights for the music.
Mm-hmm. I
it's
do like that they did bring a lot of the artists and stuff to do the concept art for
sure,
the
yeah.
world and stuff like that, because
They
it did make the
basically-
world feel very much like the anime.
It's and I agree with that, where it's like the staffing seemed to be whoever a lot of the main heads of Cowboy Bebop were a part of this show and stuff. That's what's funny if you look up the Wikipedia of the Netflix thing. It's like all these other people that produced it, but they like literally, I guarantee, were just like pulling from all the other like works of the anime, which is again why it's like, people are like, oh, you can't compare it to but it's like you have to. You
Oh, yeah.
absolutely have to.
Like, I'm not saying you can't compare it to the anime.
Well, it's like you
Well,
have to.
You have to, but at the same time, if you do kind of look at it as its
Yeah.
own thing, I think it stands up, which is something that a lot of anime movies and live action adaptations can't do. Because they just lose so much of what made the original spectacular that they lose making something good in the end as well.
Well, and I'll give this too, because again, I don't absolutely hate this show, but it just makes me appreciate, which again brings me back to like, I just love Cowboy Bebop so much. It's such an amazing show, and this is a good homage of like it as a live action thing as I could get, and I'll take it, and
This is not a Dragon Ball Evolution.
yeah,
It's-
exactly. Yeah, they didn't like, and yeah, like I like John Cho and like the guy that played Jet, and like I like a lot of things about it, and it's not upsetting, but it just makes me, and which Netflix did a good job by putting on the beef. It was probably like a month before it was released. They put all the Cowboy Bebops on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, fuck yeah. Like, I mean, thank God. Like, I mean, I have Cowboy Bebop. I'm probably like I have it on a hard drive. I have it on my computer. It's like, it's like I have it like on every source of media I could ever think of. It's like on Hulu. It's like, but I'm so glad there's another way I can watch it.
Right.
And-
And if anything, it's going to bring more people to watch Cowboy Bebop. And I love that.
For sure. I totally agree with you on that. And it's by far one of the best animes, and like the best ideas of a story, even in the live action form. It's like Spike's, like all these characters are just people you need to understand and know about. And this world too is something everyone needs to know about. If you see it live action or anime, it's like, it's just so good,
It's a very fun experience.
Yeah, it's very unique too. It's very original. There's nothing like it, and yeah, even the live action, it's like it does alter things, but it's still Cowboy Bebop in the sense of, it's not like them turning into Super Saiyans or it's like they don't go too far off the rail of like what it is. So yeah. So how do you? I forgot, how do you do this in your show? Do you guys do ratings?
We
and
do a
stuff?
rating out of 5 stars for both. And then a kind of closing statement on why we think the one is superior to the other.
All right, so let's do that, and we'll break this down and get this out.
So
you go first, since I'm
anime
stealing your show.
easily 5 out of 5. It's one of those foundation animes everybody loves and sees and everything like that, and it's just got so much to it. The live action anime or the live action adaptation, I would put at like a 3.5. It's got a lot going for it. It gets held up at certain points and everything, but the changes that they made don't always work, but the ones that do work just are fantastic and exceed everything the anime was trying to go for on those characters and those fronts. And I wish that the other changes would have made, a little bit more sense or fell in more a little with being better. But at the same time, I love seeing like a different take on something, When something falls to being an adaptation, it's typically terrible, but this one, very good.
Yeah. I guess so. We're doing 1 through 5. Is that the?
Yep.
That's the feature versus.
That's the
podcast?
double feature versus way.
All right. So yeah, all right. I'll kind of be on the same wavelength, but obviously anime top 5. It's such a beautiful anime, and it's so good, and I like it for so many reasons that so many people may not and agree on. But the live action just rubbed me the wrong way in some ways, but it's not a terrible show. It's definitely an okay show. It's not unwatchable. It has a lot to it that I know other people that I can introduce Cowboy Bebop to that actually would want to watch it. So that's cool. Because yeah, like if I try to put on the phenomenal, perfect anime Cowboy Bebop, I can't get anybody to watch 2 seconds of that. But I've gotten my wife to watch this live action one, a couple episodes, so that's by far a huge, big difference. But it just, I'm just a snob, and I'll give it a 2 out of 5, but 2.5 out of 5.
Okay.
It's definitely a big okay for me. It's not dog shit, but I just have a lot of problems with it personally, and that's why I have therapy for Cowboy Bebop.
Therapy sessions are starting every Tuesday following the next 4 years.
I go to this a therapy called Fearless Therapy, and no, it's but no, this is fun, Brad, and I'm glad that I could use your outline of your show, of your podcast show, and basically steal it to do.
I'll make sure to
podcast.
Copyright strike this podcast down as soon as it goes posted.
Oh, you have Cash App? No, no, this is great. Just I guess plug all your stuff and let's wrap this up.
Yep, you can find me with Double Feature Verses. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Double Feature Verses. Find us online at doublefeatureverses.com, which you can also find us on Spotify, on Google Play, and iTunes, just searching Double Feature Verses.
Hell yeah. Great show. And till next time, this has been the Banzai Chat. Thanks, Brad, for being on here. And I guess till next time, we'll catch y'all.
See you, Space Cowboy.
Yeah, you better carry that weight, fearless.